All right, our meeting is now in order, and I'm going to ask Brother if he will lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And we'll begin with our roll call. Will each member of the board introduce yourself?
Thank you, Reverend. I'm Bill Case. I have no conflict.
Marty Carpenter, no conflict. Richard Ashton, no conflict.
Craig Kennedy, no conflict.
Charles McKnight, no conflict. And it is my understanding that we have no public comment today. Is that correct?
Correct.
And we can begin with our old business. And we had some presentations on the election equipment. And we asked the director if she would come back after they had a meeting and studied these different systems and give us a report and a recommendation from them.
So as the board sees, and if you have any questions, because I did think of something that you did send to me, please ask. So after looking at the pros and the cons of each of the different elections equipment, we just felt that it would be beneficial for the county to go with the ZS200, which is Printelect. And as you can see, when they came, they have a huge support system that I just feel strongly about. We have a situation or a problem, and Printelect is on the back of the page. If there is a situation or a problem that arises, we can get somebody here within the day or the next day when it comes to our equipment. They maintain the equipment. If we need ballots or anything of that nature, I have actually been able to drive to their facility up in Raleigh to obtain ballots, to have them in our custody. They never take any equipment out of our building when it comes to maintaining. So we're always knowing what's going on when it comes to our equipment in the hands of Printelect. I am thankful for Mr. Bob Heisen coming from Hart. I think the only thing the real concern that I had with him is that he wasn't really just very hands-on. Once you get the equipment and talking to another county, they maintain that equipment themselves. And so I don't understand how they get the training to maintain that equipment. In the pricing that Hart did give us, they do it for one election, which was like $26,000. And then each time after that, it's a price for them to keep coming to maintain our equipment. That is just something that Printelect does for us regardless. They will come maintain our equipment before every election so that we know what's going on with the equipment prior to an election and prior to our LNA testing. We also felt like because it's something similar to what we've already had, the poll workers would be more comfortable in using it. It'll be training, but it won't be extensive training where they couldn't manage the equipment. Also, that equipment that we have had from Printelect has lasted us over 21 something years. So it is a workhorse of equipment. And so my motto is if it's not broke, well, don't fix it. But I know that this equipment will be able to maintain and hold up with everything that we have going on with the growth in Moore County. It will be able to hold up to that growth here in Moore County. Hart's equipment, and this is not knocking their equipment, it just didn't seem sturdy, especially with the box being on the floor and you having to pull it and turn it around. I was afraid that after maybe 5 years, we will have to replace it because of, it being shuffled around and put on the floor and being dragged. So at least with the Printelect equipment, it's on wheels, it rolls, everything is self-contained. The ballots are self-contained. There's keys on top of keys for security purposes. I wasn't quite sure about the security of that box when he opened it and you just saw the emergency bin, which was that little flap on the side. I wasn't really too happy with that, that look. So we just decided that the DS200 and the ADA equipment would be better for Moore County as far as the sturdiness of it, how hard it works, and how long it would last in the county. And another thing that was brought to my attention was we looked into a number of memo, even with doing, because one of the questions was the different options that they had with the different equipment. And I know with HART, they really pushed the ballot on demand where we would just have to have card stock. Well, according to North Carolina memo, state memo, we still would have to have 50% of pre-printed ballots on hand, just in case if something was to go down with that equipment, that would be our emergency backup. So that means I'm buying paper and I'm still buying ballots, which will double my cost than just going straight to ballots, having an accessible amount of ballots here on hand one time instead of having both card stock and paper stock here to print ballots with ballot on demand.
Okay, thank you. Questions, discussion from the board?
I'd only add to what Ms. Dixon just said. I think another thing you mentioned about the HART presentation, they seem to be pushing their prospective buyers into more precinct specific ballot forms, whereas you've made the point in your presentation that that isn't going to work very well for us because of all the many number of ballot styles in the various precincts. It makes that difficult to do.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not sure I was, by his pushing a format different than what works for us, didn't think that was going to be very useful for us.
That's correct.
One of my main concerns was availability if a problem arises. We live in a climate now where transparency and being able to rectify problems, particularly in voting, is so important. And one technician for 7 counties and 3.5 hours away. What if there's a simultaneous problem? What if on the other side of North Carolina, where they have someone needs a service, and we need it at the same time, even if they came directly here, it would be almost 4 hours. And if I'm a voter, in the climate that we're in, everything becomes suspect. And so we've got to make sure that we are accountable and transparent and that it makes sense. And then when I saw that the way that you would get in contact with them is with a 1-800 number, a 1-800 number, we need to have direct access. And then, again, it gets back to the availability question. They do not have an office here in North Carolina with a technician available. And here comes what would be a question for a lot of voters. We don't need to have our computers in anybody else's hands. And if there was a problem, we would have to send our computers to another state, to Texas. I just don't feel comfortable about, with the challenges that we've seen in other states, our computers leaving our possession. Those were the main things that I was concerned about with HART.
And he also indicated that basically the initial troubleshooting would be over the phone.
Yeah.
And I have problems with that. Who am I talking to over the phone? You know, they can't see exactly what's going on. You're trying to give them in a narration what's happening. So we're going to have 50% of registered voters for each style pre-printed.
Yes, sir.
Since with the new system with the SNS, we will still do ballots on demand,
No, so that's a separate system. So you just have your regular tabulation, then you have your ADA, and then you have a ballot on demand system. The ballot on demand system for me would be more beneficial for like in the office when we're doing absentees, because
Okay,
one person is controlling that. It puts all the absentee information together. So it links the labels, the ballots, everything together in a packet. So that way you're sending out that information. But the ballot on demand, you would have to have a poll worker key in that person's information and pull the ballot off and give it to the voter. So that means I have to have cardstock there in order to do it. But also, like I said, I still have to have pre-printed ballots in that precinct. That way, if something happens, like say if the machine jams or it breaks or whatever the case may be, then they would just have to go back to what they're already doing, is issuing out ballots, matching it to the ATV. The only issue that I have with the ballot on demand is I have no way of tracking how many ballots I'm using through that paper. Because usually we set out a certain amount of ballots in each precinct. That's how we keep track. So Annie and Carrie, they keep a log. If they send out 100 ballots to this precinct, we write it down, we do a balance check, and we come back when it comes back. If you're doing ballot on demand, how am I going to keep track of how many ballots they're using within a precinct? I have no way. So that means somebody will have to constantly keep going through and checking to make sure that the ballots that were printed and the ATVs and everything of that nature matches. And so it's hard to balance your precinct out that way when you're trying to just do ballot on demand. So we wanted to stick with the paper. I don't think there's anything wrong with the paper. We wanted just to stick with the paper, do it the paper way. We weren't really interested in having the ballot on demand in the precinct unless we had it here in the office just for absentee purposes.
so I initially thought there might be some benefit for one stop, because you have one location with people coming in from everywhere, and that the machine would then be able to determine, once their name was put in, the proper ballot for them. But you're talking about the only machine like that will be here in the office.
Correct.
So really, all we're going to be buying is our new tabulators, 188.
No, all the ADAs for all the precincts in the one.
You have 188 per precinct,
Yes, sir.
with some backups.
Yes.
And then,
And then just the ballot on demand for the office, if
Yeah.
that's what we want to go
Okay.
for. I think that would be easier for keeping a better track of absentees going to people's houses that way than having it in the early voting time.
do you see any value of having an extra ADA machine that people could use to see if they liked using that machine to vote over doing manual tabulation? Because the one plus I saw with that is if people forget to vote, the machine says, "Did you mean to not vote?" And they may say, "Oh, I forgot about that," or
Well,
"I
your
meant to vote for two
tabulation-
and I only voted for one."
Well, the tabulation one will still do that. The only difference when so you're mixing the two. So the ballot on demand, it doesn't do any of that. It just prints the ballot for
The
you.
ADA machine, I was talking, the ADA machine, I thought did it.
But the tabulation does the same thing. So if a person now, it will, only thing the tabulation will do is it will check it for an overvote. So if it will automatically do that. Now, it will not flag it if they didn't vote for that contest at all, because that's just what the state does. The only way it will flag it if that whole ballot is blank, and then it will flag the whole ballot. But if it will still do the same thing. It will say that, hey, this ballot, you overmarked in this race. Do you want to accept it or do you want to take it back to get a new ballot? It will still do that.
But the ADA machine would tell you if you didn't vote enough. If you forgot one, or if you had two options, you only voted for one, it would let you know, did you only mean to vote for one? That's what I was wondering. Is that beneficial to have that? I was wondering about a second machine that people could use to see if they like this new system. It's a little longer, have a second machine that people, non-ADA, could use to see if we like that approach.
I mean, they could, but you're going to hold the line up doing that.
Well, the other
But-
question I'm wondering about is how many stations are we going to have for people to fill in their ballots? I think when I looked at sometimes all the stations were full. Do we have 4? Do we have 6? Do we have 8? Do we have
So
10?
when you're saying stations to check in or places
To
to sit?
fill out.
So normally, depending on the size of the election, we either increase the spacing so people can have more room. So you having the spacing to fill out is not gonna be an issue. We really wanted to just to keep the ADA equipment for those who really
Okay.
needed the ADA. If somebody just wants to use it to look at it and try it, they can, but for those who really need it, that's what we wanna keep it open for, because it's gonna take them some time to vote on that, and we don't wanna
Yes.
have to hold anyone else up, using it the regular way, so it was just gonna be used just for our ADA
Okay.
purposes.
Any other questions? Any other
I'll make a comment.
comments?
So I know we've used ESS for years here, and I'm all for it. I think it's like Tawana said, it's been a workhorse, for us. And if we get 20 years out of new ESS equipment, it's less than $20,000 a year, really, if you want to break it down. I know you're talking about this ballot on demand and talking about getting one for the office. And it sounds intriguing. It would be neat to me to test that, but inside I say, I like printing our ballots and the checks and the balances. We know how many ballots we have at the end of an election. You know how many ballots you have left. If you just go into just putting cardstock in there and printing ballots, I think we lose that small checks and balance, because I'm not saying anybody would do anything, but there's that question there if someone from the outside question, well, how did you start with 100,000 ballots and you wound up at the end of it, you had 125,000 ballots. It's perception. So even though it is intriguing, I don't want to hold back technology, but that's just my little thought on that, is our checks and balances. So, but I definitely would like to stay with the ESS printlet tabulators.
I guess the only question I have, and I think it's, I completely agree, but there were some options in the presentation presented by Printellect. I don't know whether we need to address those as part of what we do. And I guess that's one thing. And you make a good point, Craig. I haven't really even thought about that, but again, transparency and being able to account is more important than it's ever been. And I guess I don't know if Tawana, you can address that question, or whether it needs to be addressed.
If you start out with a pack of cardstock, and let's just say it's 500, just say it's a ream, right? Then you could go back and count that, but anybody could slide more cardstock in to your, you know what I'm saying? It's just blank cardstock.
But with the ballot on demand for just the office for absentee, the system will keep track of how many ballots we sent out. So that form that we get, that Craig reads the number, that's our checks and balances that we always would match back and forth. So we can still do checks and balances. That's why I said it would be better to use in the office, because she's keying that directly into the system, and it's gonna print a report for us to see, okay, I sent this many out on this day, and then she can cross-check it with the report that the ballot on demand machine would give her. So that's why I say it's easier to do it in the office, because we have our SEAM system that we can balance it out against. But in early voting, we don't have anything to balance it out against. So that's why I wouldn't want to use it in an early voting site.
And so for the in-office, then if you send out 300 absentee ballots and you get 400 back, you're like, okay, how did we get these extra ballots in there? And that would be a question then, did somebody access the machine, print them off and mail them out to people, and then they came back?
Well, no, because the ballot on demand machine only prints what she keys in. It's not going to print anything else. So that's why I said it's easier to balance. So If she keys in 300, she's gonna send out 300, and
It's
that's
gonna print those
it's
ballots.
gonna print just with only what she keys in, and so that's the report it will generate, so she can balance it, just like when it comes back and we open up everything for that period of time. We know how many we sent out, because that's all that's been keyed into that system is what she puts in. So
So if it's not, when we go to scan it, if it's not in the system, we're not gonna put that ballot through the machine.
it's not gonna take it.
Yeah, you
Okay.
know what I'm saying, that ballot's not gonna be counted,
I
because
got you.
we wouldn't have a request form for
Okay.
it, so.
That makes sense. When you say it that way, there is a checks and
There's
balances.
more checks
And
and
again,
balances for
I'm not
her
again,
in the
I'm not
outfit.
100% against it, but I want that accountability there.
And it will,
Well, and if it makes you feel better, I don't open a new, like, if it was cardstock, I wouldn't open a new pack until it was all gone.
Right.
You have to remember, it's special paper now.
Yeah, it's not
So
just
we-
regular paper that can get mixed in.
Is it gonna have the timing marks already on it, or is it
No.
gonna?
So that prints, but now remember, the paper has to be,
A
it's
certain
not
weight.
thermal paper, but it's, sensitive to moisture, it's also a specific weight, just like the ballots that they print, so it is something where we can lock up the reams of paper in our
And I
office.
do, I keep all my supplies separate, I have my own chart that I keep accounting with,
So we can make that kind of chain of custody.
just to make you guys feel better. I do a very good
that's what she does
reconciliation
now.
process.
Right.
Well, I guess I'm a little bit confused. Have we identified a problem that ballot on demand would solve? And have we quantified that problem? I mean, I don't,
I wouldn't say it's a problem, but it helps to avoid having to over-order ballots because of the unpredictability of how many absentee requests we get.
Do we
And
have a
that's- it would
major
just make it
problem of
easier to not have to order
over-ordering?
so much excess of,
So the way that the order is, usually the state wants absentees to be out first. And so a lot of time the state does not give me a good window. So usually I have to order Carrie's absentee ballots first, since they have to be out at a certain time. And a lot of times you can order and then she starts to run out, and then she has to go into my order for at one stop and election day. So in this case, she would actually just have her whole system to herself, where she will be able to control her ballot stock without having to touch the ballot that we use for for one stop and early voting. And that's why I was suggesting that the ballot on demand, just for absentee for the office itself and nothing else.
Okay, now my other question was gonna be, we will vote today, is it to authorize you to purchase from Printellect new equipment, or we have to be specific, saying we authorize you to buy 26 new tabulators plus a 10% spare, 26 new ADA machines plus a 10% spare, plus one.
No, not that specific. So
That's
basically,
that's my question.
Oh, no,
So
sir.
we'll vote at some point today to authorize you to go ahead and contract with Printellect to purchase the appropriate number.
so you will authorize me to contact the state first to let them know the processes that you went through in order to what you decided to select. So you're just making a selection still. Once they see that I have the memo, I have to write down your names, who looked at the demonstration, the day that you had the meeting, what your discussion was, the minutes that Carrie will also attach with that, then all that information goes to the state
You guys don't
of the
authorize,
selection.
the commissioners authorized us.
And then once the state approves, then I can
You're
get
just-
permission.
wait, we can't have two conversations going on at the same time. First of all, if you folks have something to contribute, we want to hear it. And I couldn't hear it, okay? Secondly, you really should be going through the chair if you're going to talk. This is the group that is making the decisions and is inquiring about, this information. But you really should be directed through the chair. All right? I mean, that's my feeling. Because I do value what you have to say, and I want to hear it. And none of us should be contributing solely, not involving the whole board.
Okay, now I'm confused. What are you talking about now?
I'm talking about you raising questions and carrying on with other people
I've
here.
been talking to the director.
You've been directing your questions over there.
I don't
I've
think I
watched
directed
on
a
two
question over
occasions.
there.
I don't wish to argue with you. I'm just
Yes,
telling you
you
my
do.
observations.
All right, so where we are now is, I respect what you're saying, I understand what you're saying. And we'll consider that, and that won't be a conflict, one person at a time. I do want everybody to be heard. I do want protocol to be maintained. So, you were answering the question.
Yes, sir. So the board will make a suggestion of what vending election equipment they have selected. It will be drafted in the minutes, and then I have to take that information along with the numbered memo that lists who has watched the demonstration and send it to the state. And then the state will give the final approval that we did everything in order to order the equipment.
So we determine today which print system, which computer system we choose.
Yes, sir.
And it has to go through the process at
The state level, yes, sir. And
So,
then I can meet with the count, once the state sees your processes and everything that you did everything, then I have to go through the county commissioner to make the purchase.
so where we are now is the next step. Is there any more discussion before everyone here feels comfortable about making that motion for print, elect, or hard? Is everybody at a point of satisfaction that we can do that now?
And I'll say, only one other thing that popped in my mind
Yes.
is, and I think it's already been answered by the director here earlier, but is Wi-Fi capability and modems in that equipment. I mean, it does have that capability to be installed, but that's an important thing that it either needs to be not installed or disabled. Then this board needs to verify that. I think that
Yes.
there's no one could hack in from their phone or hack in from a laptop, so. And I don't know how we do that.
I guess I thought they talked about that the motherboard, you have to request a motherboard with a modem, and North Carolina does not allow that.
Okay.
But we can still have it inspected by them, because once you purchase your equipment, they have to reinstall everything in, and we can make sure that it's checked to double check. But yes, you have to request it.
Right, and they verified that in the meeting.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes. So is there anything else that we need to discuss before we make this motion?
Well, before the motion is made, you want nothing from us other than to go forward with the proposal A or B.
Correct, yes, sir.
Yes,
And you don't want any specifics beyond that.
No, sir,
Me.
because they just, everything is gonna be in the minutes that I send out to the state, so.
Right.
Because they don't care how many, because each county is different, so they don't care about how many you need, it's just what vendor do you approve of going with? That's what they wanna know.
Well, I won't make the motion just yet, but I'm going to tell you so it doesn't have to be redrafted. If I make a motion to the effect that we authorize you to take all necessary steps toward entering into an agreement with ESS Print Elect, is that all would that be satisfactory?
Yes, sir.
Then I will move that we authorize the director to take all necessary steps to move forward with ESS Print Elect as our provider for election equipment.
You heard the motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right,
God, I had to beg.
you heard the motion and prepared to vote. If you are those in favor, raise your hand. There can be no, okay, and so pass. Next on our agenda for today.
Can I make one?
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
I want to thank the the staff and
Yes.
director for a very thorough memo, which gave us kind of good information with which to make this decision.
Oh, I agree with that totally, because a lot of questions that I had, you guys have already addressed it, and all I had to do was, all right. Yes, thank you all. We now move to the memo to candidates. And Madam Director, what are the specifics that we need to focus on?
So in this memo, this was brought up from the last meeting when Mr. Hall had made a comment concerning the Bass precinct, concerning a tent and some fines. So even when they do come for their filing period, we still give information to all the candidates as to what we expect and require out of them. A lot of times, I don't think that they read it. So midway between the election cycle, we were going to send out this memo as a reminder of what we would expect out of them, their conduct at the precincts and at the different polling locations. And this time we basically spelled everything out. We gave them where the general statutes would be. Mr. Case, I did make that correction about the drop off on that day. And so this way, we wanted the board to look at what we will be handing out to each of the candidates, whether they're local, whether they're Senate, so that they are aware of what we expect from them and to follow these rules and these guidelines. So we're hoping that on election day or early voting, we won't have as many problems as we had in that past election with candidates kind of combating with each other for space and location. We try our best to expand the campaign area, but some of the candidates get big tents and it kind of takes away from others. So we're even trying to see if they can kind of narrow the tent down some so that we can have more people in there. But our main concern is to make sure that they're not blocking the voters coming into the place to come and vote. So this is another reason why we're explaining to them the rules. Only one change that was in here. Everything else has always been what we've done. One change was because some of our election day sites are small, they can't accommodate tents. And so we're asking that those sites will not be able to have tents in those locations because it's not big enough to accommodate everybody. So to make it fair, we're just not going to have tents. And I think it's just 3 locations where it's just too small to have tents in that location. And so we're just trying to make sure that it's fair for everyone, that there are no disagreements with anyone, and that it's fair for everyone across the board.
To the point I was making about an error on the early voting, I'm not sure it's been corrected. Let me ask you first, is early voting start on Wednesday, October 18th?
What's page what? Hold on.
It's the second page.
Second page. So we drop off equipment on Wednesday and early voting starts Thursday.
Well,
I thought I fixed it. Hold on.
okay, well then I guess it's all right, but that leaves a little confusion about,
Okay.
it says that may set up the day before early voting begins Wednesday, October 18th at or after 2 p.m. I guess it's okay, but I was thinking that you're saying early voting begins on Wednesday, October 18th. I guess what we're saying is that reference to October 18th relates to the day before. I guess it's all right. It's a
So,
little unclear to me, but
I mean, I can make it clear because basically we're allowing the candidates and the parties before the day early voting begins to be able to set up on that Wednesday after 2:00.
okay.
After we've had the opportunity to go by, so.
I stand corrected. It's grammatically a little, I suppose it could be clear, but I don't think it's wrong. Sorry.
I think what you're saying is early voting setup begins on Wednesday, the 18th, on or after 2 p.m. Voting doesn't start till Thursday.
Correct, sir. So usually what we do is we go out, well, Carrie and Annie go out that Wednesday morning to all the site and they fix everything. And then by that time, the candidates are allowed to put up tents, because by that time, we've had an opportunity to mark everything off where they're able to be designated at. And so we're just asking them that the day before early voting start, if they can give us until 2 o'clock Wednesday to set up. That way we're able to mark everything off. But we'll also explain it, and like I said, we can correct it to make sure that it's clear so there are no mishaps.
Okay, I think you could do that by just putting, may set up the day before early voting, period. And then setup, insert the word setup begins.
Okay.
Then that would, I think, to my mind, that would clear up any lack of clarity of that.
Yes, sir.
Everybody's had a chance to read through all of this, correct? Anything else we need to discuss, or any concerns that we have from what we have here? I really do think it's really important that everybody does get this, because half of the things I'm reading here are challenges that we faced the last time. People having questions or getting upset because they thought they were conscientious and getting there early and doing this or that. They need to know what the rules, and we're just not making them. I appreciate you putting in the statutes, the state statutes that apply to that. Okay, can we move that we will accept this memo to the candidates? I think this is excellent. And if we can get it out early to them, that would be good too.
Okay, sir.
Did you make the motion?
Will you make the motion?
You made the motion.
So moved.
So move, there we go.
Now, I wanted to follow the way it's supposed to. Somebody make the motion, somebody second it, and then I'll approve the motion. All right, you making the motion?
I'll make the motion that
All
we
right, all right.
approve the 2023 candidates, party chair, one-stop election day activity memo.
All right. And
With
With
suggested
those
changes.
corrections.
With suggested changes.
with the suggested changes. Marty, was that a second?
That's a second.
All right. So moved. All right, let's move on to new business.
Do we need to vote?
We didn't vote?
What? I didn't vote. We didn't.
Oh, well, you know that's important, isn't it? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? So moved. All right. And then we move on to new business. NCADE conference staff and that process.
Oh, yes, sir. So this is an opportunity for two of the ladies in the office to actually become certified elections administrators. So once they attend this conference, they will be able to take the state examination and actually become certified elections administrator along with myself. So I'm really happy to have them go to this conference. And this is what this conference is for. It's just for them to have a requirement that the state has for them. So they've done their presidential, they've done their municipal, they've done a regular primary, they've done a state board conference, and now they'll do this conference, and then they can go for their examination and become certified elections administrators.
And which staff?
Carrie and Amy. So that would be a nice little notch under their belt to have that certification for them as well. And I just wanted to, I know that the board is gonna be going up for reappointment. Mr. Minot, can I go to the second one? I'm sorry.
Yes, you can. Are there any questions about the first one? Have we done that before?
No, we're just getting back to in-person conferences because of COVID.
Okay.
So they were able to make one of the requirements through, well, Mr. Case was here at that one conference, but they needed this last conference. And it's now going to be an in-person conference, which is going to be in New Bern. The office will leave Sunday evening and we'll be back on Tuesday. And then after that, they'll be able to sign up for the testing in order to get their certification done. So the state is actually going back to in-person conferencing now.
Are there any fees for this conference?
Yes, sir, and the office took care of the fee.
Budgeted for it?
Yes, sir.
Good.
And for any
Including-
conferences coming up, it's been budgeted as well.
They're gonna be staying out of town,
Yes, sir.
so we are gonna cover those expenses, aren't we?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That's- Okay, then, if there's no other questions about the NCADE certification process, let's move on to in-person state board conference.
Yes, so in August, the state board will be having a conference for all election officials, board members. This is a conference that's actually required for any new board members. I know that each of your parties are gonna be getting up with you for you to decide if you want to come back. So I don't have the dates of the August conference yet. I'm gonna tell you when I get it. So once I get that information, I will give it out to you. But that is a required conference for new board members, returning board members of such. So I just wanted to kind of put you on notice about that conference in August. Once after the appointment, it takes place in July for the board members. So once I get that information, I'll make sure that I get it to you right away. I don't know where the location is gonna be at yet or anything of that nature or what the dates are, but I know that they did mention a conference in August and it will be in person and the office will cover the expense of that.
It's August 13th through 15th.
Okay, thank you. August 13th through the 15th.
13th through the 15th?
Yes, sir.
Sunday through
Sunday through Wednesday, Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Or Tuesday.
Tuesday, Sunday through Tuesday. Did they say where, Carrie?
No.
Okay.
They
So-
don't
Sunday,
do that,
that's
so,
interesting.
yeah, they were,
No, the state always starts on a Sunday. Why? And we end on a Tuesday.
They won't tell us where until later so that you don't like book up the hotel.
Oh, true.
You know, they don't want you to hotel grab. So they wait.
Yeah, they're gonna wait, but your appointment in July will take place first and then we'll get the hotel. But the office will cover that. That has been budgeted to cover for the office and the board member.
Do you recall on Sunday what time during Sunday begins?
Usually you can check in about 4:00. Registration is about 4:00 or 3:00 in the afternoon. Yeah. And then like Tuesday, we usually leave about 1:00 that afternoon, depending on.
I have to adjust.
And I'll talk to you about the Sunday, but tell us about our new employee.
So after extensive, we had a lot of people that applied for the administrative assistant position. We were able to make a selection. Her name is Miss Nicole Hovland. She has actually been in administrative for about 13 years. So she comes with a lot of experience. She will actually be in the office April 3rd. More likely by that time, I'll probably have a meeting with the board again after I'm able to meet with the, get all the information with the state so that you can meet her. But we do have somebody here now that's going to be able to fill our administrative assistant position now.
What specifically would she be doing?
Basically helping Nick with with poll workers, sending out letters, helping to pack up supplies, everything that we see kind of fit for her to do. Helping when we have poll workers that come back and dropping off equipment, she'll be able to assist Carrie with that. While Annie is doing the night returns, or I'm just kind of making sure that the board members have everything. Just an extra set of hands to help us
I understand.
with the office.
And the person begins in April 3rd?
Yes, sir. April 3rd is when she'll begin.
What county?
Here, she's here. She actually lives in Seven Lakes. So she's local here.
That's good. Is there anything else that we need to focus on today before we adjourn? Juwan, is there anything else that we need that you can think of?
No, sir, no.
Okay.
Oh, I apologize. So there was one thing that I was trying to get to the board. It was about, if you recall, the precinct, where I had the precinct line entering into Pinehurst. The gentleman that I'm supposed to meet at the state board, we've been having a conflict of interest because he's in classes, so I won't be able to speak to him until Friday at 5 o'clock. So once I get the information I need from him, then I can pass that on to the board to know what to do with that situation that I brought up to the board before with that boundary line.
I'm remembering this vaguely. We made a decision then, didn't we?
Yes, you had made a motion to have us move that line down so that we can encompass those houses. The problem that I'm having is it's also a centrist boundary block. And our precincts have to match centrist boundary blocks. And so that's the issue that I'm having right now. I have to see it. What am I allowed to do? And then I can bring that back to the board to see what's the best course of action.
Okay. Because I remember when we voted on that.
Yes, sir.
Yes. All right. You have nothing else to claim my attention. Thank everyone for their presence, participation today. And you can make that motion.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion adjourned. Meeting adjourned.
Turn it off, Jared.
Hey, good seeing you. Leaving this, given our usual discussions, not to let you know, is that I did want to go.